here. Getting our lives together. Good morning, good morning. Hold on. All right, I'm seeing. Okay, perfect. Okay, it's working as it does, which is lovely. And let me see. Good morning. Hope everybody's doing well. Just kind of syncing up the video. If you've done this before, you know how it goes. It takes me like a minute to get my life together, but it's also early, so I'm sure everybody else is doing the same thing. Yeah, I was gonna give it an extra minute for it to kind of figure itself out for people to hop on. I hope everybody's doing well this morning. We are in May. I know what month it is, which means there's been a lot of migration activity recently. So a lot of let's see, okay, a lot of people have reported their rose-breasted grosbeaks, which is super fun. I love those birds. Um, I know we've had one or two that have had indigo buntings, which is also really cool. I know Merlin has tracked a great crested flycatcher by Sound ID in my area, and I know the wood thrush have come back, which is exciting. Um, and I finally got a good look at the black-throated blue warbler that passes through my yard, which was absolutely stunning. So that was very exciting. And of course, a lot of people are still starting to get more hummingbird activity as we go along as well too. So I hope everybody's having fun with that. Keeping track of what birds you're seeing. Definitely feel free to comment if you've seen a really exciting one this summer so far. Spring, sorry, not summer. Good morning. Thanks so much for hopping on. I appreciate it. So okay, we have two people. That's awesome. So good morning, guys. Hope you all are doing well. And we're gonna go ahead and just probably get started because it's hit that point. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jolene. I'm a certified songbird feeding specialist with Wild Birds Unlimited of Concord, and that title does not help us for this conversation and specific topic. So we're gonna go more with education coordinator on this one, because today we are talking about nightjars and nighthawks, which are really cool birds. I'm definitely not an expert at them, but I definitely have enough to hopefully share some really cool knowledge with you guys. So hopefully you guys are ready to learn a lot about them. Same as before, if we come up and you have any questions about something, feel free to upload a comment. I will be taking a look at those as we go forward, and if I can't answer it right away during the presentation, I will certainly come back to it later as well too. But we're gonna go ahead and just jump right into it. So it should be a lot of fun today. So first things first, these guys are in the order Caprimulgiformes, which is different from our order Passeriformes that a lot of our other songbirds are in. Fun fact about this order is that these guys have also informally been known as goat suckers because of Aristotle 2,000 years ago being like, yeah, these guys go in the middle of the night and they go to your goats and suck the milk out of their teats. And I was like, that's definitely a thing that happens. And that is not a thing that happens, but now that order is known also informally as the goat suckers. So if you ever hear these guys referenced as that is one of their names. It's definitely a fun time. More specifically, these guys are in the family Caprimulgidae, which means a lot of our nightjars and nighthawks are specifically in this one family. We have 9 nightjar species in North America, but we're talking about 3 primarily that we get in our area during the summertime, which include the eastern whippoorwill, Chuckwill's widow, and the common nighthawk. These birds often have heavy association with owls or hawks, and you'll figure that out as we go on. A lot of it is due to the coloration of their plumage and their supposed nighttime habits, which they do have some. But essentially, let me see, hold on. Yeah, so essentially, a lot of their naming and stuff like that common nighthawk aspect is due to that association, which we'll talk about later too. So these birds are also medium distant migrants as well. As you can see from the map over on the right, this is a common nighthawk range map as well. They have a tendency to shuffle between North America and South America, and common nighthawks specifically have one of the longest migration paths of birds in North America, which is really cool. So essentially this kind of orange area over here in the States is, and kind of through Mexico and Central America, is all of their summer nesting range, while this blue is their wintering habitat, and then you've got the purple, which is their year-round range. So they've got quite the large map. The yellow is where you find them migrationally in the spring or the fall, which is really cool. Common nighthawks also specifically have a very interesting timing for their nesting habitat. They often show up a little bit earlier and leave a little bit earlier, or kind of show up a little bit later and leave earlier, due to food availability. And we'll talk a lot about their diet as well too as we move forward. So These birds have all the looks, all the behaviors that make them really quirky and funny, and I really love them, and I never get tired of them. When it comes to ID for a lot of nighthawks and nightjars, these birds have very large, flat heads. They have very large eyes in comparison to what we usually see in a lot of our songbirds and other birds. And then they also have a very horizontal posture. So these guys can't stand upright for the life of them, and that's not their job. That's not what they're built to do. They have very short legs as well, so they can use them, unlike, for example, hummingbirds who do have short legs and can maybe shuffle a little bit at best. These guys can walk around a little bit more effectively, but it looks very funny. So when identifying nighthawks, for example, these guys have pronounced barring on the belly and the sides. So you can see it kind of goes into the wings as well too. And their wings themselves, this also is kind of connected to their shape. For nighthawks specifically, their wings extend past their tail. So they are a little bit longer in that regard. And nighthawks as well have very slender wings that allow for a lot of agility and fast movements in open areas. One fun thing about common nighthawks is that they're also nicknamed bull bats for their erratic bat-like flight. So a good example of that too, and one thing I want to point out as well, is on their wings, kind of similar to if you've ever seen your mockingbirds flying, they have that large white wing patch on the center of like their wings in flight. These guys have a similar thing. They have a wing bar kind of on their primaries that you can see both on the top and the bottom of their wing, and also while they're at rest. So you see that on the side as well too. So for example, because they have kind of longer, slender wings and they're made for more agility, their wing flaps are very stiff and they're also very quick. So they are very bat-like. They can make a lot of quick turns as well too, and you can see those nice prominent wing bars whenever the bird is in frame. We all know bird watching is not easy, so some of these videos are going to be a little out of view, which is really fun. You also can tell on the tail, there's nice prominent barring there as well too, a little bit when you're paying attention. They also have a nice white patch on their throat, but that isn't always a good ID for species because a lot of them do have that. A lot of different nightjars have that kind of style. These birds can occasionally be active during the day, so compared to some of the other nightjars, you can find them in the afternoon, especially during migration or preparing for migration. And they also have all of these guys kind of look similar, but they do have distinctive calls from each other. For the common nighthawk, it's kind of a very simple beat. It kind of sounds like a frog in the summertime. So there is a little bit of wind in the background, and it also shows you how large they can open their mouth, which will be important to their diet, we'll talk about later. So just a simple one note beat. So they're very fun, very simple call. You can also hear that call while they're flying as well too. So if you can't get a good look at those wing bars or patches, you can listen for that sound as well. So those are our nighthawks. We do also have nightjars. Again, these are all in the same family. Nightjars specifically have larger eyes than nighthawks. They also have longer eyelashes, and they also have a very reflective eye whenever you're like shining a light at them or taking a camera like video or photo, and that is from a layer in the eye called the tapetum lucidum. It's a reflective surface that allows for better light absorption during times when there isn't a lot of light. You often see this behavior in a lot of, or this kind of response in a lot of nocturnal animals, so other owls, cats as well too. You can see this kind of thing as well. Not only that, but these birds also have a lot of rictal bristles around the bill, which are essentially modified feathers that act kind of like whiskers, that essentially allow for sensitivity to things kind of around the face. Compared to nighthawks, nightjars have shorter and rounder wings, which allows for better maneuverability. So these guys can often be found in more wooded areas compared to the common nighthawks, so they don't really need that kind of fast agility. They need to be able to maneuver in kind of closer, smaller spaces. One thing that's really cool about nightjars as well, I was so excited that somebody had the photo of this, is that these birds also have a pectinate claw. So on one of their toes, essentially there are these growths that act as a comb. So essentially when these birds are preening or cleaning their feathers, they can kind of swipe this comb through to potentially get rid of any parasites or debris that they may not be able to get rid of otherwise, which I think is really neat. Fun little adaptation there. Now, in regards to the other two species of nightjars that we have the whippoorwill and the chuck-will's widow. Fun thing about this is that their names are literally what they sound like. So that makes it very easy once you know what you're looking for, on how to listen for them. Oftentimes, these birds will sing at like in the evening or in the morning, so you're not going to hear them too much at night, and not going to hear them too much during the day, depending on like what's going on there. So this is also a very good example of those rictal bristles on this whippoorwill that I was talking about. So right where the mouse is, you can kind of see those long extended feathers. And you can see these birds look very similar. There's a slight variation in color pattern and the kind of white patch on the throat as well. So there are some distinctions there. But again, you have to know exactly what you're looking for. I will say on the chuck-will's widow, it's a very good example of them having a longer tail and shorter wings compared to the nighthawk, which has kind of longer wings compared to the tail as well. So you know they have those different shapes that support them differently there as well too. One thing I will say about, of course, this doesn't help depending on how you see them, is that their tail feathers are also a little bit different. The chuck-will's widow versus the whippoorwill. They have white in different locations on the tail as well too. So again, primary thing when you're listening for these birds is, listening for their song when you're looking for them. So for example, with the whippoorwill, this one oftentimes people have heard this song either in movies or in video games, or at least that's my experience. It's one of those where you're out in the woods, kind of in the middle of nowhere. You can definitely come across this song as well. And this is the bird that makes that sound, which is sometimes not what people would expect. Essentially, their sound goes like whip or will, you know? So I'll just let the video do a better job than I ever could, right? So they can they can have it slower or faster depending on what they're looking for. One other thing I'll show off real quick too is that these birds have partial white patches on the throat. So you can see that it's a white patch here and a white patch here, but it's separated by some more darker brown feathers in the center as well. So that is a very distinct call for them. And then with your chuck-will's widow, this one's a little bit different. The chuck note is very short. So it goes chuck-will's widow, essentially, when you're listening to it. So it's not as easy as the whippoorwill, but it is still there. So I get what they were going for, but I will let that play as well, too. So it goes chuck-will's widow. The widow is the part that extends faster, longer. And they've also got that reflective, you see that tapetum lucidum layer anytime the camera reflects on them as well too, which is really cool. Not every bird has that as well. So the diet of these birds is super interesting. These guys are primarily insectivores, so they will go after a lot of types of flying insects because that is what they're built for. You see that they have a giant gape and their mouth opens a lot bigger than some people would expect, but essentially they're great at catching flying insects, anything from mosquitoes, queen ants, moths, beetles, caddisflies. They're very much opportunistic. They'll take whatever they can, essentially. And a big thing that separates these guys from a lot of your owls or other nocturnal species is that these birds are crepuscular. So they're active during the dawn and dusk. This can change a little bit for some of the nightjars or potentially common nighthawks if they're in more of a city dwelling with a lot of artificial lights. So essentially, so nightjars can stay active in larger cities that have a lot of lights on at night. That gives them better visibility in order to see the food that they're going for, while nightjars may be more active during nights with full moons or brighter light at night. They are not usually going to be active during the entire duration, again, more often during dawn and dusk. For nighthawks specifically, these are the birds that forage on the wing. So similar to swallows and swifts, these are the birds that are going to be catching food right out of the middle of the air and flying the entire time while doing it. Another really cool thing about their gape is essentially that area in their mouth has a lot of blood vessels and a lot of surface area. So if you've ever seen, it's a very similar concept to like hares or rabbits that are in desert areas. You know how they have like super large ears? Essentially, that's great for thermoregulation and getting rid of extra heat. They have a lot of blood vessels in those areas, like in those ears, and of course in the common nighthawk's mouth, that essentially when air gets in there, it cools down the blood that visits. So when it travels back, it kind of helps, kind of like a built-in AC unit, except not as efficient. But it's a very good job. But essentially, that helps with thermoregulation as well too. So when these birds pant, it's just helping transfer air and kind of cooling them down internally, which is really cool. These birds can also forage in flocks. So unlike some nightjars, you can see them in all together. And this may happen more so closer to that migration time versus nesting season. But this can be sometimes what it looks like. Sometimes it's way high up. I remember I saw these birds, I believe, in Knoxville, Tennessee, and they were like way high up, obviously, above the buildings. This obviously is much closer down to like over a pond or a lake area. And they're just going for a lot of those aerial insects, which is really cool. All the birds here, you can see those white wing patches, so you know exactly who you're looking at as well too, and that stiff wing beat as well. So they are, again, very interesting to kind of observe and watch. Another cool thing about these guys is not only do they eat in the middle of the air, but they also drink in the middle of the air. So, okay, maybe not the middle of the air, but basically if they're in an area like I just showed you and they're a little bit thirsty, they can basically swoop down, scoop some water up in their bill, and then kind of keep flying as they're going as well too. So they never really need to stop until they are like kind of done foraging essentially, which is really cool. I'm going to keep saying that these birds are really cool because they are. So that's just one of those things I'm going to keep doing. Sorry about that. Essentially, yeah, so that is your common nighthawks. They usually forage on the wing and kind of go for it that way. Nightjars are a little bit different. They have a tendency to do usually kind of sit and wait, and then once they see their prey, kind of hop and fly in the air, snag that prey, and go back down. So they, again, are built for areas that are kind of a little bit more enclosed, so they're not more in those open habitats. Those rictal bristles help with sensing prey and blocking debris as they kind of fly and go different places to get their food. Oftentimes, they also forage alone, so you're not usually going to see all of these birds together in one site, whether it's like a roosting site or nesting site as well. Again, compared to the nighthawks, these guys can be a little bit more nocturnal depending on, honestly, moon phases and how much visibility there is. They do better off at night compared to the nighthawks, but they still need a little bit of help. So again, not completely nocturnal on their own. One really cool thing, or at least interesting, I think, is the fact that Chuck-will's widow is a little bit more opportunistic than some of these other birds. So during migration or molting season, basically when their tail feathers are getting new ones and they may not be able to fly as well because, again, these guys have short legs. They're built for a lot of flight. It's very difficult for them to move around. So essentially, when these guys are foraging during that time, they'll oftentimes hunt on the ground, which is very important to their survival and not an easy thing to do. So oftentimes during this situation, they can go for a lot of different food items. So there are records of them eating warblers, other songbirds, and frogs in order to kind of supplement their diet and give them the nutrition they need while they're vulnerable in this state too. So I think that's crazy. That is so cool. So like I said earlier, these birds have short legs. They can walk, but it's not graceful. So this is just an example of a common nighthawk nest, and it's a little bit out of frame, but you can kind of watch them shuffle over once it gets back over into frame. So again, compared to like hummingbirds or other species, they can use their legs a little bit better than others. They don't usually walk super far, but they can. And this is an example of that gular fluttering that they do, that basically panting, that helps keep them a little bit more cooler, especially in hotter times as well. So that is just an example. They are doing their best. They don't hit both eggs, but I'm sure the temperatures are hot enough where that will not be an issue. So yeah, that's just an example of that kind of movement that they do. During nesting season, these guys will use their calls and songs to establish and defend territory. So that's usually when we will hear all of those songs in the evening or the morning. Chuck-will's widow only calls during nesting season as well, and they're a little bit more elusive. So the only time that we know they have left their nesting habitat is essentially when they stop calling, because they're no longer doing that, no longer raising their young. These birds do have different courtship strategies. The common nighthawks basically have one where the male dives and essentially booms at a female before landing nearby. The booming sound that they make is actually when wind passes through their primaries, and it's a very distinct noise for them, which is really interesting as well. But essentially, they dive the female, land somewhere nearby, and they flex their wings and wag their body side to side, kind of exposing those white patches on the throat or other portions of their body. This is not that behavior, which is such a bummer. I couldn't quite find that one, but this is just an example of how they kind of move side to side. So you can imagine it looks a little wonky as they kind of puff out their wings and show those patches as well too that they have. And also, just another thing to note too, they look very similar to the bark of different trees or a lot of the habitat that they kind of surround. So they can be very difficult to spot if you don't know what you're looking for as well. So depending on the species, the way they expose like the white patches on the collar, the wings, outer tail feathers, that can tell you a lot about what species you're looking at, depending on like where those are and how they're showing them off too, which is fun. When it comes to nesting season, these guys will often nest in areas that are just a shallow depression on the ground. They don't really make a nest. They kind of drop their eggs in a certain spot, call it that good. That's perfect enough, and kind of work with that area. The stuff that they kind of nest on can vary from sand, gravel, pine needles, metallic surfaces. Common nighthawks are fun because, again, they can nest on like rocky outcroppings. They also utilize flat gravel rooftops as well. So they can often do some city nesting too, but they also take advantage of open forests, sandy dunes, prairies, or grasslands. So they're kind of versatile. Whippoorwills and chuckwill's widow prefer more woodlands or forested habitat. Chuckwill's widow prefers more open habitat or some more open resources for foraging compared to whippoorwills as well. So it's a little bit different, but sometimes these birds do have overlaps in where they're nesting. So you might, where there is one, there might be one another 50 or so meters down a different way, which is really fun. One thing that's really cool about the whippoorwills is they often coordinate their nesting with the lunar cycle as well. So I think they usually lay their eggs, I think 10 days before a full moon or something like that. So essentially when their eggs hatch, whenever the adults are trying to find food resources at night or looking for the most resources available, they have more time to do so in better lighting to also feed their young, which is really cool. Chuckwill's widow are very sensitive to nest disturbances. So if somebody does something and they don't like it, they will just take their eggs and go somewhere else, which I find to be an interesting behavior that doesn't happen often, depending on the species. So this is also a very good example of a Chuckwill's widow nest with one of the adults basically incubating the eggs. You can see that it would be very hard to spot if you're not looking very carefully and know exactly what you're looking for as well too. This is what a whippoorwill nest looks like when the adult is not on it. So you basically just have two eggs that are deposited, and the adult will come back and kind of cover those and hide them as they are incubating them, essentially. Oftentimes, these birds can have 1 to 2 broods with 2 eggs. Usually, the Chuckwill's widow can have anywhere from 1 to 4, depending on how well the season is. These are usually a kind of buff-white coloration with different types of splotches or speckles, depending on the species. And like I said, the adults are highly camouflaged, and they are very difficult to flush from a nest. Not that we really want to, but essentially what will happen is they will not leave because they are the thing that are protecting these eggs and keeping them hidden, because when they leave, those eggs are kind of a nice bright patch sometimes in comparison, depending on the species. So as you get closer, the adults will oftentimes do some type of defensive behavior or posture in order to get you to stop or to go away or to potentially protect their nest. This happens a few different ways. They may kind of jump and leap at you, kind of like this one, which would definitely surprise anybody. Nightjars also may do, or not Nightjars, Nighthawks may also do like a broken wing display, where essentially they distract from the nest by acting injured as well too, similar to killdeer. So there's different strategies there as well. And usually as they're, and there's some other styles too that I'll talk about in just a second. But essentially, once these guys start nesting, incubation takes about 21 days. So 16 to 21 days, depends, like half a month. and then nesting takes a little less time. When these eggs eventually hatch, these birds are semi-precocial, which is actually different from a lot of our songbirds who are often altricial. So as a reminder, a lot of songbirds like bluebirds have young that when they hatch, they have very little downy feathers. Their eyes aren't open. They require a lot of parental care. With a lot of nightjars, these young are usually well feathered in some way, a lot of downy feathers. Their eyes are somewhat open, but they do still require a lot of that parental care. Whippoorwill nestlings are interesting because they move around a lot. So sometimes the adults can kind of knock them out of the way if there's a danger or something going on. And this is a really cool example of that as well too. So oftentimes people will do they'll continue observing nests to see how progress is going along and what's going on there. Of course, sometimes birds don't like that, which is totally valid. So this is an example of a whippoorwill doing a defensive display. You'll also hear kind of some growling that'll happen as well from these birds. And what you'll notice is as soon as the video starts, two little nestlings are going to get up and kind of walk towards the top left of the screen as well too. You'll hear some talking in the background. I'll try and dodge that where I can. I'll play it one more time just because it's kind of like that. You can also see, pause. Okay, you can also see some of the white tips on the tail feathers. This again can be different for each species, which can be really interesting as well. So essentially, they kind of do that defensive behavior in order to protect their young as well too. And of course, like these birds are crepuscular, so are their young, so they're often fed in the mornings and the evenings. They can again be fed more often on nights with better lighting from the moon as well too. So of course, it's one of those things too, like with many species, there have been notes in their populations declining as well. A lot of this can be attributed to a few different factors, such as pesticide use and a loss of aerial insects in certain habitats. So of course, where there is no resource, they do shift around, because again, that's not sustaining them for the nesting season. Common nighthawks have had habitat loss, both from open woods areas and rural areas that they've utilized, and also flat gravel rooftops in urban areas. A lot of people, construction has changed, just like with anything over time. So they no longer have gravel rooftops. It's often a different type of finish on the top of these buildings. So sometimes what some people have done is they've done a little gravel square kind of tucked away on the top of the roof. And sometimes that can encourage that common nighthawk nesting as well in those more urban areas as well too. A lot of the times, too, these birds are susceptible to being hit by cars, which you wouldn't expect, but oftentimes they'll utilize the roads for foraging during those evening times just because that's a great resource. It's still warm, and there's just a good amount of insect activity in those locations. So in general, when you're driving at night, stay safe, drive slow, be careful, be aware, all those types of things, because there's plenty of nocturnal wildlife that come out. We've all seen it. But being mindful of that, especially in more wooded areas, can be helpful to a lot of different wildlife. Whippoorwills have lost some habitat due to the fact that there's been a lot of loss of open understory forest. So, of course, they like a lot of canopies, but oftentimes when things start to get a little bit more there's more subcanopies or there's more shrubs or things like that, that's not really what they're looking for. So whether that's from converting to focusing on crops or pasture, urbanization and building new cities, or even fire suppression, because again, fire suppression can alter the state of a habitat. So birds that maybe thrive in areas where fire is necessary may not be able to do as well at that point in time as well. And then with Chuckwill's widow, they're a little bit harder to survey because they are very inconspicuous. People hear them well, but sometimes they can be a little bit more quiet and a little bit harder to find. But I did find something that has been interesting is there is a group with a website called Nightjars.org, who essentially focus on surveying different nightjars that are in the area and kind of seeing their paths, where they're going, how they're doing. So if you want to learn more there as well too, you can check that out and see some of the different species that we have in North America as well too, which is really fun. outside of that, where can you find these guys? So obviously they're not usually in your backyard unless you have a very nice wooded habitat that really suits them well. So if you're on a mission to find them, I have listed some of the time frames and some of the nearby places that people have spotted these birds in the past. So you're free to pause this and check that out later. But if you want to get more into the nitty gritty, this can be helpful for people that are in North Carolina or potentially other locations. So first off, there's a really cool website called ncbirds.carolinabirdclub.org, where essentially it allows you to find different types of birds and learn more about their, let me see, goodness, the different things they have there. So let me see if I can do this the right way. But essentially you can look them up by family or their common name. And in this case, we're going to look at Chuckbill's widow because I know that can be hard. So essentially, they've got like general comments, where they've been seen in the past, where we have them, when we have them, how they're found in the coastal plains, Piedmont, mountains, and finding tips as well too. So you could see areas that they've been reported in the green, and also areas where they're fairly common, which of course is going to be more towards like eastern Piedmont or potentially just the coast as well too. So you would have to go a little bit farther to look for them there. And again, it has like nice little finding tips and stuff like that there. So this is a very fun website for North Carolina if you're looking up specific birds. And then eBird is awesome because you can actually explore certain areas as well. So if I'm looking up the eastern whippoorwill, once I figure out my typing, I can actually go to the top left and enter a region. And if I want to learn more about North Carolina, it can show me a range map of like what people have seen, when they usually see them. So totally depends on like location there, and also the top photos for the area, top sound, and you can kind of learn more about that. There's also like alerts for rare species in your area too, depending on who's posting on eBird. But that's a great way to stay up and up to date on those things as well too. So if you ever want to check that out, those are some good resources to investigate as well. And with that, that is all I have to say about Nightjars and Nighthawks. I probably said very cool way too many times, but that's just one of those things that happens when you when you're a little bit behind on practicing. But hopefully you guys found that super interesting. Again, MacaulayLibrary.org or Macaulay. I, again, still don't know how to pronounce that, and sometimes I never will. MacaulayLibrary.org is a great resource for anybody to update audio, photo, video of different birds that they've seen, so you can learn about birds all around the world. Allaboutbirds.org is a great, simple resource to learn more about birds just in general. If you have any birds in your area you want to learn more about, has a great resource there. And then Birds of the World is where I get most of my like scientific data information. If you ever want to kind of take a look at that, that's where a lot of that is as well. But Macaulay Library is really cool. As with everything else that was during this presentation. So if you're coming in the store, I do have a $5 off a $25 purchase or more that you can use available today, either in store or through phone order as well. And of course, like usual, we have a second viewing of this presentation in store at 11 a.m. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed that a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you had any questions, feel free to comment them when you can. And thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful rest of the day and enjoy the rest of migration season as it goes on. I will see you guys next time.